In this lesson, we're going to learn your first chord, the G chord, or the number 1 chord in the major keys. First though, we're going to memorize the names of the strings on the guitar and what these spaces are called so that we can more easily learn the chords. So first let's learn the names of the strings. You'll notice that there are lower sounding strings, lower in pitch, which are actually higher in the air, all the way up to higher sounding strings, which actually are closer to the ground. So they call these the low strings and these the high strings because they're lower in pitch down right here and they're higher in pitch up here. So if you can remember this phrase, moving from the low strings to the high strings, Eddie ate dynamite, goodbye Eddie. Then you can remember the names of those strings moving from the low ones to the high ones. The beginning letter of each of those words in that phrase will help you to remember the names of each of those strings. So Eddie ate dynamite, goodbye Eddie tells you that this string is named E, this is the E string, A string, the D string, the G string, B string, and another high E string. Okay, so again the phrase is Eddie ate dynamite, goodbye Eddie. I'm going to be referring to those string names as we learn our chords. So it's really a great idea to start memorizing those right now. Now these spaces right here, you'll notice that there are metal bars that divide up the guitar neck, and they're called frets. And we're going to play in between the frets. You're not going to put your fingers on the actual metal bars, you're going to put them in between. So this space right here between this white part on the guitar, which is called your nut, and this first fret, they call this playing at fret number 1. Okay, so in between there. Any time you play in there on any of those strings, it's called fret number 1. Here is fret number 2, anytime you play here on any of the strings. And in between this fret and this fret, this is called, you're playing at fret number 3. Okay, so I'll also be referring to those as we're learning your chords. You'll notice too, we drew a little picture over here of your guitar standing upright like this. This is just a picture of the neck. These are the strings coming down, and then these are the metal bars, the frets, going across. So this would be fret number 1, fret number 2, fret number 3. And then the low sounding string all the way up to the high sounding string. And you can also see the letter names of those strings, E, A, D, G, B, E, to memorize those. Okay? So we're going to call the fingers of your left hand finger number 1, finger number 2, and finger number 3. For most of our chords, these are the top 3 fingers that we're going to use. So I'll be referring to these finger numbers as well. Okay, so the G chord is one of the main chords in the major keys. There are 4 main ones that we're going to learn first. And with those 4 chords, you can play over 1,000 songs just with those 4 chords. So let's go ahead and get started with learning the G chord. So go ahead and take finger number 1 of your left hand, and you can put that on the A string, which is the second to the lowest sounding string, on fret number 2, right there. And you want to just use the very tip of your finger and put it right in between, again, the metal bars at fret number 2 on the A string. That's the middle finger, or finger number 2, goes right on the low E string at fret number 3. And then you're going to take finger number 3 and move that all the way down to the high E string, also at fret number 3. Okay? So this might feel really awkward at first, but it gets much easier to do as you do more repetitions. Okay? So this is the G shape, and you can think about a chord as just being a shape that you're going to hold your hand in on the guitar. Okay? Each chord has its own shape and creates a different sound on the guitar. Okay? So most songs, as you'll learn, are really the average number of chords per song are about 4 chords. Okay, so we're gonna learn your top 4 chords in these next few lessons here. So again, the G shape looks like this. Finger number 1 right on the A string right there, fret number 2. Finger number 3 right at the low E string, fret number 3, and finger number 3 all the way down on the high E string at fret number 3. So once you have the G chord, you can play that one time just by taking a pick and strumming all the strings from the lowest to the highest. And that's what it'll sound like. Okay? Also, it might sound a little muffled at first because maybe, it's a little hard to put pressure on yet, but eventually it will sound clear like that. A really important thing to remember is as you're learning all of these chords, we want to keep a space in between the fretboard, which is this, and your hand, okay? So we don't want to grab the chord very tight like that against the fretboard. We want to actually leave a little bit of a space. You can kind of see that I'm leaving a space there. What that does is it allows the strings to ring out, and it also allows your fingers to move easily to other chords. So we're going to remember to keep that space as you're doing your correct repetitions. Okay? So here is a chord diagram. It's just the same thing that we had over here, but now we put the finger numbers, and I'll write those in as well, where to put each finger. So you'll notice finger number 1 goes right there, finger number 2, and finger number 3. And this is just, again, a picture of your guitar neck standing up like that, the strings coming down in each fret, fret number 1, 2, and 3. And then these are just where to place each finger. This is just a little picture for you to remember where to play these chords if you forget. So again, this is the G chord or the number 1 chord shape in the major keys. Okay, so we're going to remember it like that. Also, if you saw this written down on the musical staff, it would look like this. So we're also going to memorize this while we're doing that. So to get really good at this chord, we want to make it into a habit. We want to get the memory of this chord inside your hand with all of your chords. Because, you know, as with playing music, you don't really have time to think between chords. It keeps moving, right? So we want to actually get the memory inside your hand. So just like you learned anything else, like tying your shoes, riding a bike, brushing your teeth, anything that involves your muscles, all we need to do is get enough correct repetitions, and then it will be inside. The memory will actually be in the muscles, and you won't have to think about it. It'll just be natural. So in order to do that, we're going to take a few steps. First step is to go ahead and put your hand in that chord shape, remembering exactly where to do that. Also leaving the space, keeping your fingers at about a 90-degree angle to the strings. And then the next step is we're going to strum from the low string to the high string one time. Then you're going to look at the notation written on the musical staff to memorize that part of it as well. Okay? So those are the 3 steps we're going to take for each repetition. So that would be 1 correct repetition. Then we'll take your hand away and start the whole thing again. Okay? Again, put your hand on the shape, remembering the space, remembering to keep your hand or your fingers at a 90-degree angle, strumming 1 time, then looking at the musical notation. Okay? That's 2 repetitions. So the way we do this is we do them in blocks of 10 correct repetitions. So we simply repeat those steps until we have 10 correct repetitions. You're going to be doing the first block of 10, 20, or 30 repetitions with your coach here in the lesson, and then you can do the rest at home. So you'll get really good at doing this, but I just want to walk you through the steps right now. So once you get 10 correct repetitions, then you'll go ahead and mark an X in one of the cells for your skill mastering chart for that skill. So again, in the lesson you'll probably get maybe the first 30 repetitions, 10 to 30, somewhere in there, with your coach. And then your job is going to be to get all of the rest of the X's filled up at home. You want to take a small break. That's why we're doing them in blocks of 10. You want to make sure that you're never straining your muscles, and so that they never start feeling fatigued or tight or strained. So if you start feeling that, go ahead and take a break before doing more repetitions. And that's why we take them in blocks of 10 also, so you have a little break in between. And you can also keep track. This is kind of fun at home. You can actually know, wow, by the time you get 100 correct repetitions on any of these chords, it's almost guaranteed that you're going to have these memorized for the rest of your life. So it's pretty exciting to be able to see your progress and to know that pretty quickly you're going to have these first 4 chords learned and really have the skills to play thousands of songs just with those, and then we're going to learn more beyond that as well. So again, 1 block of 10 correct repetitions will probably only take about a minute as you get good at these. The first few may be a little bit more, but as you get learning exactly where to place your fingers, it will become easier. So to complete that whole entire block could take as little as 10 minutes or less. Of course, you do want to have a little bit of a break in between those, especially if your hand's getting tired. But it won't take a lot of time to memorize and have these chords as a habit inside your hands. Okay? So your mission this week is to memorize the phrase Eddie 8 Dynamite, Goodbye Eddie, so you remember your string names, and then go ahead and complete your correct repetitions on your G chord.